everybody, this is John for MTG Nexus coming at you with a viewer submitted list, Arturo Ferretti. I hope I pronounced that right. I asked me a couple weeks back to take a look at this list, and it's kind of been on the back burner. I wanted to get to it on my day off before I proceed to work a week in a row. So here I am working on it at 1:45 in the morning. As a friendly reminder, if you like modern content, especially the lightning bolt based variety, please consider subscribing to the channel, as we aim to be the most informative channel on modern for YouTube for modern. So this is a mono black Phyrexian Obliterator mid-range deck, topped out by a couple of copies of Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Phyrexian Obliterator is a black 5/5 with trample. Basically says anytime a source of damage will be dealt to Phyrexian Obliterator, that source's controller sacrifices that many permanents. Kind of very problematic for aggressive decks, burn decks, etc. Somewhat negated by things like Path to Exile and such, but very powerful card. Can cause problems for decks that are trying to attack. Beyond that, you have your Inquisition Thoughtseize package, as well as some Fatal Pushes to interact with your opponent's early stuff. One copy of Defile, which is an interesting one. Target creature gets -X/-X, where X is the number of swamps you control. And then we have some Bloodghasts and some Aetherborns. These kind of play a little bit two different roles. Bloodghast is kind of a recursive threat that is kind of difficult for control and other mid-range decks to deal with. Gifted Aetherborn is a death-touching life-linking creature, so it can be a removal spell on a body as well as gaining a little bit of life. Two copies of Collective Brutality here can be kind of a duress mode, number 8 and 9, as well as giving a little bit of a buffer against burn and such, especially since some parts of your deck are kind of life-intensive between Thoughtseizes and Phyrexian Arenas. Speaking of Phyrexian Arena, this is a unique card that I don't think sees quite enough play. Basically says at the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and lose life. Pretty powerful effect. Two copies of Murderous Rider. This card needs no introduction. It's one of the best adventure creatures there is. Two copies of Liliana the Last Hope. This card doesn't see quite as much play, but it's pretty good against small creature decks, killing mana dorks, etc. Also pretty good against control, as it kind of threatens to either bring back a bunch of threats or to ultimate and kill your opponent. Liliana the Veil, pretty good in mid-range decks. I can understand why you only want two, though. This deck goes a little bit higher up on the curve than something like Jund. One copy of Cletus. Pretty good card when you're trying to take the control role. Grey Merchant of Asphodel, pretty nice curve topper for what this deck's trying to do. And one copy of Erebos' Intervention, which can be a removal spell and allow you to gain some life, as well as in a pinch, exiling cards from the graveyard. The mana base is quite interesting. Obviously, it's a mono black deck, but in amongst here you have a bunch of swamps, some Urborgs, a Witch's Cottage, which is basically Mystic Sanctuary for creatures instead of spells. One copy of Nykthos, give you a little bit of a mana boost when you have a board. Leech-ridden Swamp, interesting one. Basically, you lose a life. Each opponent loses one life. Activate this ability only if you control two or more black permanents. I think that's a nice one of Ghost Quarter to kind of blow up Tron and such in some spots. Detection Tower. I'm detecting someone who's gotten hurt by Hexproof a time or two. Then two copies of Castle Locthwain as an additional source of card draw from whatever else is going on in the main deck. 23 lands I feel might be a bit light, but we will see how that plays out. Sideboard. You are a mono black deck, so your options are a little bit limited here, hence the bunch of artifacts, Grafdigger's Cage, and Nihil Spell Bombs. Pretty good against graveyard shenanigans. Two copies of Ratchet Bomb. This is kind of your pseudo-engineered explosives against anything 0, 1, and 2 drops. Two copies of Torpor Orb is an interesting one. I would guess this is mainly geared towards things like humans and maybe merfolk. This hasn't really been a huge card. I guess it can also kind of... Does it stop goblins? It hurts goblins, but I don't know if it stops them. Then Damping Matrix is another one. I double-checked to make sure this wasn't Damping Sphere. No, it was definitely Damping Matrix. Activated abilities of artifacts and creatures can't be activated. Two copies of Fulminator Mage to attack mana. 2 copies of Ashiok is a nice card to have in mid-range mirrors. 1 copy of Extirpate, yet another Graveyard Hate piece, and then 1 Domination and 1 Languish. So, there is a part of me that does wonder if like Defile and Extirpate are better off as something like Cling to Dust, but you know, I'm sure Arturo has his reasons. That said, let's jump into a couple of 2-man queues and see if we can kind of get a better idea how this deck performs. We are here with our first look at Mono Black Obliterator. This hand, if it carries any risk, it's the lack of mana, but between Fatal Push and Inquisition and a couple copies of Gifted Aetherborn, I think I'm pretty comfortable keeping this hand in a lot of matchups. Looks like we're going to be up against humans. Yep. This is probably a reasonable matchup for this deck in terms of what it's trying to execute. Reflector Mage and Champion of the Parish. It's kept a very mana-heavy hand. Daylight coming, we pass the turn. Ayo. I sing ayo. Still know 2 of the 3 cards in our opponent's hand. They draw. Nope, they drew one of them Mantis Riders. Okay. 100% trading? Nope. Mantis Rider. Mantis Rider. Thoughtseize. Well, that's likely a dead card. So that was very dumb of me. Should have played the fetch land there, but let's do that. I guess with Fatal Push. Nothing to violin. Which tells me you either have another 3-drop in hand or another land. How are your Aetherborns? They're feeling gifted. It's possible we should have Thoughtseize there, but just don't feel it's worth the risk. Oh yeah, sure. It's a rather savage card. No, actually, it's just not worth doing that. Still no Reflector Mage. Oh boy. I think our opponent's going to be an Obliterator hater. Human? I guess they could make a illusion here. Them having probably have nothing, but I'm gonna check and find out. Okay. General is present and accounted for. With a they drew a Noble Hierarch. See if they use the General's other ability here. Sacrifice 2 humans. Defile. Don't think there's anything you can draw here. Maybe Reflector Mage keeps you in the game. EA Sports. It's in the game. Concession. It's in the cards. Ookily dokily. So we want the Damnation. We want the Languish. Ratchet Bomb seemed decent. Torpor Orb could be okay-ish. Cards that are not particularly good. These Thought Seizes don't seem particularly interesting. Bloodghasts are kind of medium here as well. This isn't particularly a Bloodghast kind of thing. And maybe bring a Thoughtseize back in. Leaving the Brutality is just strictly as a removal spell, pretty much. Okay. Hand seems okay if Event Mana Light. Do I Thoughtseize or do I Fatal Push? I feel like I Thoughtseize. Reflector Mage. Meddling Mage. Mantis Rider. One of these things is not like the other. Okay. Putting around this number here. Through the third land, so Mantis Rider is probably incoming. Take a hit for 5 here. So it means we get to pop Bomb next turn and do the thing. It'll push. It's a nice follow-up card. Guess there's no reason to trigger anything else right now. See if we can get something else for our trade here. Another Mantis Rider. Sure. So how much damage would I take if I just accept this as it is? Damnation. Left with Reflector Mage and yep. Sack a creature. Hold a fatal push. Sure. Feel very free discarding this Phyrexian Arena. Discard to dismember. Okay. We hold up Fatal Push and Murderous Rider here. Okay. Just play the land. It's whatever, I suppose. Feels like it's easy peasy from here. Alright, that was a fairly easy first match for this deck. On to the next match. We're back for second match. This hand looks interesting. Guess we keep this hand. We have Brutality, which is a fairly reasonable magical card. Okay, so we're probably losing Brutality. I don't imagine our opponent's going to take the Bloodcast here. We up against a Stoneforge Mystic. Yep, we are. So Fatal Push would be a great card. Another Collective Brutality. Alright, well, it looks like we're on losing mode here. Sure. Perhaps that turn one keep was, or hand was a little bit loose of a keep. Give it one more draw step. This is a deck I've seen pop up a couple of times. I don't think it's all that particularly good. But let's go ahead and go score to you. Get a little bit of information on the way out here. This feels like it might be a damping matrix matchup. Could be an Ashiok matchup. Probably a Blood Gas matchup. Cards would we actually cut here? I think with Stoneforge and some other stuff, there's actively enough relevant cards that we want some of the discard at least. You can shave one. I'd love to shade the Brutalities, but I don't think we have enough kill spells for things here. Don't know that we're actually the control role, so I'm going to board out Kalidas. Could be entirely incorrect. Like I said, that's one of the dangers of playing a, this hand's better than the last one at least. You know you're gonna freaking path, throw my hands up in path. Probably more of a fatal push kind of thing. Sure. Tide Holoskuller. Sure. Take this hit for 2. I like it. Opponent's got souls. That's a rough one. Okay. Sure. I am glad we got to have a better showing, at least in game number 2. That way there will be a game number 3. And the question becomes, do I want other things to combat those lingering souls? Opponent's got souls. Maybe some ratchet bombs. Some bomb diggities. Once again, I'm kind of terrified of a turn 1 or turn 1 discard spell into turn 2 Stoneforge. Gonna take on Ashiok. A little bit slower on the draw, a lot worse. We are by far more the control deck on the draw. This hand is... well, it's questionable. I think we keep... oh, you don't have a discard spell, but of course you have a discard spell. Probably taking our discard spell, right? Right? Yep. Yep. Nope, it took Phyrexian Arena. Okay. Neon has a good draw, if we can draw a third land. Got a Scholar. Got some souls. Got a Fatal Push. I can't currently cast the Scholar, so I guess we take the Inquisition. Land, please. Really don't want to play that land until we have to. Doo-dah, doo-dah. Don't want to fix our opponent's mana. Oh, the doo-dah day. Oh, they've got souls, yay. Oh, they've got souls, yay. Thoughtseize. One's got a Fatal Push, a Tidehole Scholar, and one unknown. Safely pitch this Thoughtseize. Oh, it pushes the Fatal Push. Now they get the Scholar-ish. Opponent is going to be Scholarly. Which, ironically, it's probably better under the Scholar than it is... It's got souls. Take a hit. It's in the book. Liliana. Yep, sure. With one card in hand. I am the great Bomb Diggity. Boom. Here comes the boom. Ready or not. Here comes the boom. Go, friend. You have one card in hand. Robert Confidant. Okay. It's a pretty decent one. Rush back the souls. Defile's a pretty good draw. Robert Confidantis. Take a hit 2. And like it. Sure. That was dumb. Should have just let our opponent discard. Don't go riding on my Liliana train. Yeah, that's a problem. Maybe if I'd been a little more decisive with my Ratchet Bomb, I'd be in better shape, but alas, we are not, so. Wow, that's a great draw. Yep. Don't think we're recovering from this position, but we can at least give it a go, right? Take a hit for 4. Opponent gets their Stoneforge back, I'm presuming. Sure. Be back in a sec with a wrap up. So we are back with the wrap up on mono black Obliterator here. So I think the deck is a lot of fun. I do think I would probably approach building it a little bit differently than it's currently built, but I do understand how the deck is built and why it's built the way it is. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Bloodghast. I guess I kind of understand, as they're like your Lingering Souls-esque free discard outlet for both Liliana and Collective Brutality, so I understand the purpose of the card. I'm just not a huge fan of kind of low impact value cards like that in the matchups where you're trying to outgrind things. I don't think Bloodghast is the best way to do that. But then again, I haven't played this deck more than 2 matches, so I think I would look at something like Knight of the Aben Legion as a 1-drop over Bloodghast to lower the curve even a little bit further and maybe get a little bit more aggressive, kind of like the mono black aggro and mono black vampires deck does in Pioneer. But beyond that, I can kind of get behind the entire deck. Even the one of Cletus in the main. Like I said, the main deck is pretty coherent at what it's trying to accomplish. And while we did get stuck on lands at least once with a bunch of Gray Merchants in hand, I think what this deck's trying to accomplish overall is fine. The sideboard, I presume there's a lot of reasons for these cards. Like the cages, the spell bomb, the rafted bombs, etc. I can kind of understand. I don't know. Just really hard as a mono black deck to just kind of like have two torpor orbs. If this damping matrix was damping sphere, I could see it making a lot more sense in the current meta. I don't know what damping matrix is targeting. Ratchet bombs just make sense. Spell bomb makes sense with cages, is fine, especially when you add the Erebos' intervention plus Ashiok's and stuff. There's just a lot. The extra pape feels like a little much. Like I said, I understand you're trying to get a combo piece or something, or maybe you can get lucky and get your one of Ghost Quarter and extra Tron lands. But I think I'd really prefer like a Cling to Dust in this spot, just a little bit more flexible of a card. And then the sweepers, once again, perfectly understandable. Like I said, I understand a lot of what's going on here. I just don't. This isn't the kind of jam that's kind of my jam. I don't know. Bloodghast, obviously, more pips of devotion for Gray Merchant here. But I mean, the deck is fun. Like we took apart humans, which makes sense, and then we kind of got outground by a black-white mid-range deck. Where does this deck keep... The black-white mid-range deck, where does this deck keep coming from? Because this is like the second... I think the second or third time I've played against it in the last couple of weeks. And I haven't seen like any significant finish with it. Is it just like people are trying this kind of grindy mid-range black-white stuff deck? I don't know. It's like a Stoneforge, Tadhilla Scholar, and then like Lingering Souls and Up the Chain kind of thing, as opposed to like the black-white Death Shadow deck we played like a month or so ago. But as for this deck, it was pretty fun to play. You know, it's really kind of hard to get too much of an opinion after like 2 matches, but you know, deck's fun. Anyways, this has been John for MTG Nexus.